The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making my already pounding headache worse. My fingers trembled as I clutched my worn leather purse against my chest like a shield. The metallic taste of fear coated my tongue as I stood in the cavernous office, feeling smaller with each passing second. "Sit down," the Mafia boss said coldly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You're not leaving until you tell me the truth." My legs nearly buckled beneath me as I lowered myself into the plush leather chair across from his massive mahogany desk. How had my life spiraled to this point? Just 3 weeks ago, I was Ellie Morgan, 26-year-old single mother, working double shifts at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant on the city's east side, stretching every dollar to provide for my 4-year-old daughter Lily. Now I was here, facing the most dangerous man in the city, with nowhere to run. I should have called in sick that night. The thought had crossed my mind when Lily's babysitter almost canceled. But I needed the money desperately. Rent was due, and the medical bills from Lily's last asthma attack had drained my emergency fund. So I'd begged Mrs. Patel from next door to watch Lily for a few hours, promising to bring back tiramisu. I remembered the exact moment he walked into Bellini's. The restaurant had fallen eerily quiet, like a held breath. Even before I turned around, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, something electric and dangerous. "Table 7 needs attention," my manager had whispered urgently, his usually confident voice tinged with nervous deference. "Mr. Castellano, very important client." I'd heard rumors about Dante Castellano. Everyone in the city had. 32 years old, and already the undisputed head of the Castellano crime family after his father's mysterious disappearance 3 years ago. Handsome enough to grace magazine covers, dangerous enough to make hardened men tremble. But nothing had prepared me for seeing him in person. When I approached table 7, my heart stuttered. He sat alone, although 2 intimidating men in dark suits stood nearby, scanning the room with practiced vigilance. Dante Castellano was breathtaking in the most terrifying way. Sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes under heavy brows, full lips set in a hard line. His perfectly tailored black suit probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. His hands, adorned only with a heavy gold signet ring, rested on the white tablecloth. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Bellini's," I'd said, proud that my voice remained steady despite the way my knees trembled beneath my black uniform skirt. "May I tell you about our specials this evening?" He'd looked up slowly, his dark eyes capturing mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. For a long, uncomfortable moment, he just stared at me, his gaze moving from my face to my name tag and back again. The corner of his mouth had curved slightly. Not quite a smile, more like he'd discovered something unexpected, and wasn't yet sure if he was pleased. "Eliana," he'd said, my name rolling off his tongue in a way that made it sound like it belonged to him. No one called me Eliana except my late grandmother. My name tag only said Ellie. "What do you recommend?" he'd asked, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through my bones. I'd recommended the osso buco, our chef's specialty, and he'd nodded once, dismissively, returning to the phone call he'd apparently paused when I approached. I fled back to the kitchen, feeling his eyes on me the entire way, like a physical touch trailing down my spine. That night, he stayed until closing, conducting business with a stream of visitors who came and went from his table, speaking in hushed tones. Each time I approached to refill his water or clear a plate, he would abruptly stop his conversation, his dark eyes tracking my movements with unnerving focus. When I brought his check, he handed me a black credit card without looking at the bill. Our fingers brushed during the exchange, and I couldn't help but notice how warm his skin was against my perpetually cold hands. As I returned with the receipt, he caught my wrist, his grip firm but not painful. "You have beautiful hands," he'd said, his thumb tracing over my knuckles. "A pianist's hands." I'd frozen, heart hammering against my ribs. "I used to play, in high school," I'd whispered, wondering how he could possibly know that. He'd smiled then, a predator's smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'd like to hear you play someday." When he finally left, I discovered a $1,000 tip on a $300 meal. I tried to return it, running out to the parking lot where his sleek black Bentley waited, but his driver had stopped me with a firm hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Castellano doesn't make mistakes," he'd said, his tone making it clear that refusing wasn't an option. I'd accepted the money with shaking hands. That night, I couldn't sleep, torn between gratitude for the money that would cover Lily's medications and a creeping dread that I couldn't name. The next day, an enormous bouquet of white lilies arrived at my apartment. No card, no explanation needed. I knew who they were from, and it terrified me that he knew where I lived. The day after that, a piano was delivered, a gleaming black baby grand that dominated my tiny living room. The delivery men had refused to take it back, insisting that everything had been paid for, including 1 year of professional tuning services. That night, as Lily delightedly banged on the keys, I stood at my window, certain I could feel eyes watching me from the black SUV parked across the street. For the next week, expensive gifts arrived daily, designer clothes in exactly my size, children's books for Lily, gourmet food deliveries. I donated the clothes, kept the books because Lily had already fallen in love with them, and shared the food with my elderly neighbors. I tried to avoid him when he returned to the restaurant the following week, asking another server to take his table. But my manager had pulled me aside, his face pale. "Mr. Castellano specifically requested you, Ellie," he'd said, adjusting his tie nervously. "He's not a man we can say no to." And so it began. Twice a week, he would come to Bellini's, always requesting my section. He rarely spoke beyond ordering, but his eyes followed me constantly, dark and possessive. The tips were always extravagant, the gifts continuing to arrive at my apartment despite my never having given him my address. I should have quit, should have moved, should have done something. But where would I go? How would I support Lily? The tips alone were paying for her medications and building a savings account I'd never been able to manage before. Then came the night that changed everything. I'd been working a double shift, exhausted from being up the previous night with Lily during an asthma flare-up. As I served Dante's usual table, I'd swayed slightly, my vision blurring from fatigue. Before I could fall, his hand shot out, steadying me, his grip firm around my waist. "When did you last sleep?" he'd demanded, his voice low but sharp. "I'm fine," I'd insisted, mortified. "Just a long day." He'd studied my face, noting the dark circles under my eyes. Without another word, he stood, threw cash on the table, and guided me firmly toward the exit, his hand never leaving the small of my back. "What are you doing?" I'd hissed, trying to pull away without creating a scene. "Taking you home. You can barely stand. I can't leave. My shift is over," he'd finished, nodding to my manager who seemed to shrink under his gaze. "Get your things." Too exhausted to fight, I'd retrieved my purse from the break room. Outside, his Bentley waited at the curb, the driver holding the door open. Every instinct screamed at me not to get into that car, but after weeks of gifts and attention, after seeing how he commanded every room he entered, I'd somehow convinced myself he wasn't as dangerous as his reputation suggested, at least not to me. How wrong I'd been. The Bentley had glided through the city streets, Dante sitting beside me in silence, his presence filling the car with tension I could almost taste. When we pulled up in front of my apartment building, relief flooded through me until I saw the black SUV parked nearby and a familiar figure leaning against it. Marco, my ex, Lily's father, the man who had abandoned us when I was 7 months pregnant, only to reappear occasionally demanding money once he'd gambled away whatever cash he had. The man who had sworn to get what was his, the last time I'd refused to give him money for his debts. I hadn't seen him in months, had hoped he'd finally moved on. My stomach dropped at the sight of him. "You know him," Dante said. It wasn't a question. "Lily's father," I'd whispered, my hands clenching into fists in my lap. "He wants money." Something dangerous had flashed in Dante's eyes then, a cold fury that made me shrink back against the leather seat. He said something in Italian to his driver, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Wait here," he'd ordered me. And then he was out of the car, moving with lethal grace toward Marco. I couldn't hear what was said, but I watched Marco's face transform from aggressive confidence to ash-white terror. Within minutes, Marco was gone, peeling away in his battered car, and Dante was opening my door, offering his hand. "He won't bother you again," he'd said simply. That night, he'd insisted on seeing me safely to my door, his eyes taking in every detail of my small apartment. When his gaze landed on Lily, asleep on Mrs. Patel's lap on the couch, something in his expression had shifted, softened for just a moment. "Your daughter?" he'd asked. I'd nodded, fear spiking through me at the interest in his eyes. "Please," I'd whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was begging for. Protection? Distance? Mercy? He'd looked at me for a long moment, then reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch feather light. "Get some sleep, Eliana," he'd said softly. "I'll see you soon." 3 days later, Marco was found badly beaten in an alley behind a casino. The police report said it was likely related to gambling debts. I knew better. That same day, I received papers in the mail, legal documents transferring full custody of Lily to me, with Marco's signature, notarized and completely legitimate. I should have run then. Instead, I'd written a thank you note, leaving it with the maitre d' at Bellini's. The next night, after my shift, the black Bentley waited outside. The driver handed me a phone, a new iPhone I couldn't afford, with Dante already on the line. "Have dinner with me tomorrow," he'd said. Not a request, a statement. And foolishly, feeling indebted, curious, and yes, undeniably drawn to him despite my fear, I'd agreed. That dinner led to another and another, always in private rooms, at exclusive restaurants, or at properties he owned throughout the city. Always surrounded by his security, always controlled environments where his word was law. I told myself I was playing a dangerous game for Lily's benefit. With Dante's attention came financial security, protection, opportunities for my daughter I could never provide on my own. I told myself I could handle it, that I understood the boundaries. I was a fool. And now, 3 weeks after that first dinner, I sat across from him in his office, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain he could hear it. My simple black dress, another gift, suddenly felt too tight, too revealing. The diamond bracelet around my wrist, which I'd reluctantly accepted just yesterday, felt like a shackle. I said, "Tell me the truth." His voice cut through my thoughts, dragging me back to the present. He leaned forward, his dark eyes boring into mine. On his desk sat a manila folder, and my blood ran cold as he flipped it open to reveal photos. Me, earlier that day, meeting with Detective James Riley in a coffee shop across town. "It's not what you think," I said, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "No?" Dante stood in one fluid motion, circling the desk until he loomed over me. His cologne, expensive and subtle, notes of cedar and something darkly spiced, enveloped me as he leaned down, one hand on each armrest of my chair, caging me in. "Then explain to me, cara mia, why the woman I've welcomed into my life is meeting secretly with a police detective. Explain to me why you would betray my trust this way." The hurt in his voice, buried beneath layers of cold anger, was what frightened me most. In the weeks I'd known him, I'd come to recognize that beneath the ruthless exterior was a man driven by a code of loyalty that bordered on obsession. And in his eyes, I had broken that code. I swallowed hard. He approached me, at the restaurant, said he needed to talk to me about Marco. A muscle twitched in Dante's jaw. "And you didn't think to tell me this?" "I was scared," I whispered, and it wasn't a lie. I had been terrified, of the detective, of what he knew, of what Dante would do if he found out. He said he had questions about Marco's assault, that I was a person of interest. "I didn't want to worry you." Dante straightened, studying me with those impenetrable dark eyes. "You didn't want to worry me," he repeated, his tone making it clear how ridiculous he found that notion. "So instead, you meet him in secret and lie to my face when I ask where you're going." He moved away suddenly, pacing the length of his office with controlled fury. I watched him, this beautiful, dangerous man who had inserted himself into my life with the relentless force of a natural disaster. In just 3 weeks, he had made himself essential to my existence. Through fear, Yes, but also through unexpected kindnesses, through the genuine interest he showed in Lily, through the way he looked at me sometimes, like I was a miracle he hadn't dared hope for. Dante, I said softly, using his first name despite knowing how it would affect him. As expected, he stopped pacing, his attention snapping back to me. I made a mistake. I should have told you, but I was trying to protect you too. He laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Protect me? You think I need protection from a mid-level detective who can barely tie his own shoes without department approval? I know what he really wanted, I continued, forcing myself to hold his gaze. He wasn't interested in Marco. He wanted information about you, about your business. He thought he could use me to get to you. And could he? Dante asked, suddenly very still. I stood on shaking legs, gathering courage I didn't know I possessed. No, I said firmly. I told him nothing. I would never betray you that way. Dante moved toward me with predatory grace, closing the distance between us until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He reached up, his fingers tangling in my hair, tightening just enough to tilt my head back, forcing me to look into his eyes. Why should I believe you, Eliana? He asked, his voice a dangerous whisper. Give me one reason. In that moment, suspended in his grip, I realized a terrible truth that had been growing inside me for weeks. Despite everything, the fear, the control, the knowledge of who and what he was, I had fallen for Dante Castellano. And that made me more vulnerable than anything else. Because I'm yours, I whispered, the words falling from my lips before I could stop them, whether I want to be or not. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating as his grip in my hair softened, becoming almost a caress. Say it again, he demanded. I'm yours, I repeated, tears filling my eyes. And it terrifies me. For several heartbeats, Dante remained perfectly still, his eyes searching mine for any trace of deception. His hand slid from my hair to cut my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. You're right to be terrified, he said finally, his voice low and intimate. What I feel for you, it isn't gentle, Eliana. It isn't kind. He stepped back, creating distance between us that somehow felt more threatening than his proximity had been. I watched as he moved to the wall of windows behind his desk, looking out over the city lights that sparkled like fallen stars in the darkness. His silhouette was sharp against the glass, shoulders broad beneath his impeccable suit, posture rigid with controlled power. When I first saw you, he said, not turning around, I thought you would be a momentary distraction. Beautiful, yes. Interesting, perhaps. But temporary. He laughed softly, the sound lacking any warmth. I was wrong. He turned then, his face half in shadow. Do you know what Detective Riley told you over coffee today? My blood ran cold. He knew exactly what had been said. Of course he did. He said you were dangerous, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper, that you would destroy me. And what did you tell him? I swallowed hard. That I could take care of myself. The corner of Dante's mouth curved upward. Can you, cara mia? Because from where I stand, you've made a series of disastrous choices. Starting with Marco. The mention of Lily's father sent a jolt of anger through me, straightening my spine. That was a lifetime ago. I was 19 and stupid, and I got Lily from that mistake, so I can't regret it entirely. No, Dante agreed, his expression softening fractionally. Your daughter is exceptional. He said the word with such genuine admiration that my heart clenched painfully in my chest. During the past weeks, he had been surprisingly good with Lily on the few occasions they had interacted, patient with her endless questions, attentive to her chattering stories in a way that seemed impossible for a man like him. But your association with Detective Riley, Dante continued, his voice hardening again. That was a mistake you made just this morning. One that could have consequences beyond your imagination. He returned to his desk, fingers trailing over the manila folder containing the surveillance photos. Did he offer you protection? Money? A new identity, perhaps? Yes, I admitted. All of that. He said he could help Lily and me disappear. Start fresh somewhere you couldn't find us. Dante's hand curled into a fist on the desk, the only visible sign of his fury. And did you consider his offer? I hesitated too long, and Dante's eyes flashed dangerously. Yes, I finally said, deciding that honesty was my only chance now, for a moment, when he showed me the photos. What photos? I closed my eyes, unable to look at him as I spoke. Of the men who opposed you, what happened to them? What happens to anyone who crosses Dante Castellano? The silence that followed was deafening. When I finally forced myself to open my eyes, Dante had moved closer, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Are you afraid of me, Eliana? He asked softly. Yes, I whispered. Good. He nodded once, decisively. Fear will keep you alive, but know this. He reached for me again, tilting my chin up with one finger. My enemies suffered because they betrayed me. I protect what's mine. Always. The possessiveness in his tone sent shivers down my spine. I'm not yours to protect, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I never agreed to this, whatever this is. His laugh was genuine this time, rich and warm with actual amusement. Agreed? Oh, Eliana. He shook his head slightly. The moment you accepted that first gift, the moment you didn't run when you realized I was watching you, the moment you stepped into my car, you agreed to everything. He was right, and we both knew it. Each small surrender had led to this moment, trapped in his office with nowhere to run, bound to him by choices I had made with my eyes wide open. What happens now? I asked, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. Now, he said finally, we address your meeting with Detective Riley. He believes he can take you from me. He's mistaken. But the situation must be corrected. Fear gripped me like a physical force. You can't hurt him. He was just doing his job. He doesn't... Enough. Dante cut me off with a sharp gesture. Your concern for the detective is... noted and misplaced. He moved to a cabinet against the wall, removing a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. Riley is irrelevant. My concern is ensuring there are no further misunderstandings between us. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into each glass, offering one to me. When I hesitated, his eyes narrowed slightly. It's just whiskey, Eliana. 30-year Macallan. If I wanted to drug you, I have far more efficient methods. I accepted the glass with shaking fingers, the crystal heavy in my hand. What kind of misunderstandings? About your position in my life, he said simply, taking a sip of his whiskey. About what I expect from you, about what I offer in return. I stared at him, the whiskey untouched in my hand. And what exactly is my position in your life? His dark eyes held mine over the rim of his glass. That depends entirely on you. The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. I set my whiskey down untouched, needing to move, to think. But as I stood, Dante's hand shot out, gripping my wrist firmly. I didn't say you could leave, he said, his voice dangerously soft. I need to get home to Lily, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Patel can't stay late tonight. His grip loosened, but didn't release entirely. Your daughter is fine. I had Alessia pick her up from Mrs. Patel's an hour ago. She's at my penthouse with my housekeeper. Panic surged through me like an electrical current. You took my daughter? Without my permission? I ensured her safety while her mother was busy betraying me to the police, he corrected coldly. She's watching cartoons and eating ice cream. Maria is excellent with children. I yanked my arm free, fury temporarily overwhelming my fear. How dare you? You had no right? I had every right, he interrupted, standing to his full height, towering over me. You think I wouldn't discover your meeting? You think I would allow you to conspire with law enforcement against me and not take precautions? His voice was controlled, but I could hear the rage simmering beneath. Be grateful I only ensured Lily's safety instead of assuming the worst about your intentions. Take me to her, I demanded. Now, Dante regarded me coldly. You're in no position to make demands, cara mia. Not after today. I felt tears of frustration burning behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. Please, I said, hating the pleading note in my voice. Please, Dante. She'll be scared without me. Something in his expression shifted, softened marginally. She wasn't scared, he said, his tone gentler. She was excited to ride in the fancy car and see where I live. She asked if you would be there too. The thought of my daughter happily going with Dante's people, trusting because of the connection she'd witnessed between us, made my stomach twist with guilt and fear. What had I done? What world had I allowed Lily to become part of? I need to see her, I insisted, my voice breaking. Please. Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Bring the car around. We're going to the penthouse. Relief flooded through me, making my knees weak. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said, his voice deceptively mild as he gathered his suit jacket from the back of his chair. Our conversation isn't finished, Eliana. It's merely changing locations. The ride to Dante's penthouse passed in tense silence. In the 3 weeks since he had entered my life, I had never been to his home. Our dinners had always been at restaurants or private clubs. The few times he had seen Lily had been at my apartment. This crossing of boundaries, bringing my daughter into his personal space, felt significant in a way that terrified me. His driver navigated through the city with practiced ease, eventually pulling into an underground garage beneath one of the most exclusive buildings downtown. I'd walked past this gleaming tower of steel and glass many times, never imagining what lay inside. 2 security guards nodded respectfully as Dante led me to a private elevator, pressing his thumb to a biometric scanner. You live here alone? I asked, desperate to break the suffocating silence as the elevator ascended swiftly. Yes, he replied simply, though there is staff, housekeepers, security, a chef when needed. It seems lonely, I said without thinking. Dante's eyes flicked to mine, something vulnerable flashing in their depths before disappearing behind his usual mask of control. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing, cara mia. Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened directly into a stunning foyer. Marble floors gleamed beneath soft lighting, the walls adorned with what looked like original artwork worth more than I would earn in several lifetimes. Everything spoke of wealth and power, tasteful, understated, but undeniable. Mommy! Lily's voice rang out, and I turned to see my daughter racing toward me from an adjoining room, her face split in a wide grin. I knelt, gathering her into my arms, breathing in her familiar scent of baby shampoo and the faint sweetness that was uniquely hers. Hey, sweetheart, I murmured, holding her tightly. Are you okay? Lily pulled back, her blue eyes, so like mine, bright with excitement. Dante has a fish tank with Nemo and Dory in it, and Maria made spaghetti that twirls on the fork. Can we stay here tonight, please? I glanced up to find Dante watching us, his expression unreadable. Behind him stood an older woman with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes. Maria, I presumed, who smiled gently at me. Lily has been a perfect angel, signora, she said, her Italian accent pronounced, but her English clear. She has had dinner and is ready for her bath whenever you wish. Thank you, I said, overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all, the domesticity that seemed so at odds with the confrontation in Dante's office just an hour ago. Maria will show you to Lily's room, Dante said, his tone neutral. Everything she needs has been provided. Once she's settled, we'll continue our discussion. I wanted to argue, to demand we leave immediately, but one look at Lily's excited face told me that would only upset her. And I couldn't afford to show any conflict between Dante and myself in front of my daughter. Not when I still didn't know what he intended. Come on, sweetie, I said, forcing a smile as I stood, taking Lily's hand. Let's get you ready for bed. I'll show you the way, Maria said warmly, leading us down a hallway lined with more expensive artwork. The Lily's room that Dante had mentioned turned out to be a child's paradise. A spacious bedroom decorated in soft blues and purples, with a canopy bed fit for a princess, shelves filled with books and toys, and yes, a large aquarium built into one wall, populated with colorful tropical fish. When did he do this? I whispered to Maria, as Lily raced to press her face against the aquarium glass, cooing at the fish. Maria's eyes crinkled with a smile. Mr. Castellano had it prepared 2 weeks ago. He said it should be ready, just in case. Just in case. The words chilled me to the bone. Dante had been planning this, planning to bring Lily here, for weeks. While I'd been telling myself our relationship was casual, undefined, he had been creating a space for my daughter in his home. With Maria's help, I got Lily bathed and into pajamas. Brand new, perfectly sized, with her favorite cartoon character on them. As I tucked her into the enormous bed, she yawned widely. "I like it here, Mommy," she murmured sleepily. "Dante said I can have piano lessons, can I?" "We'll see, baby," I said, smoothing her damp hair back from her forehead. "Sleep now, okay? 'Kay." Her eyes were already drifting closed. "Love you." "Love you too, more than anything," I whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I stood watching her for several minutes, my heart aching with love and fear in equal measure. How had I let things go so far? How had I allowed Dante Castellano to become so entwined in our lives that my daughter now slept peacefully in a room he had prepared specifically for her? "She'll sleep well," Maria said softly from the doorway. "Children always do here. It's peaceful." I wondered how many children had stayed in this room, how many women Dante had brought into his life before me. The thought sent an unexpected spike of jealousy through me, which I quickly suppressed. Whatever Dante and I were to each other, it wasn't exclusive. It couldn't be. Maria led me back to the main part of the penthouse, where Dante waited in what appeared to be a living room, though the term seemed inadequate for the vast space with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city below. He had removed his suit jacket and tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone, a fresh glass of whiskey in his hand. The casual intimacy of his appearance made my heart race traitorously. "Maria, that will be all for tonight," he said, not taking his eyes off me. "Please ensure we're not disturbed." The housekeeper nodded, casting me a reassuring smile before disappearing down another hallway. "Your daughter is comfortable?" Dante asked, gesturing for me to sit on one of the sleek leather couches. I remained standing. "You prepared a room for her, weeks ago." He inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the accusation in my tone. "I like to be prepared for all possibilities." "This was your plan all along," I said, anger rising again. "To bring us here. To, what? Make us prisoners in your gilded cage?" Dante's expression darkened. "Is that what you think?" He set his glass down with deliberate care. "That I'm keeping you prisoner? What would you call it?" I challenged, reckless now that Lily was safely asleep. "You tracked my movements, photographed me, took my daughter without my knowledge, and now you've brought us here under duress. If not prisoners, what are we?" He moved toward me with predatory grace, stopping just short of touching me. "Guests," he said simply. "For now." "And if we want to leave?" His dark eyes bore into mine. "Do you, truly? Because I don't think you do, Eliana. I think you're afraid. Not of me, but of what you feel for me." His words struck too close to the truth, and I took a step back. "You don't know what I feel, don't I?" He followed my retreat, closing the distance between us again. "Your pulse races when I'm near." His fingers brushed the hollow of my throat, where my heartbeat betrayed me. "Your pupils dilate when I touch you." His hand slid up to cut my cheek. "And when I kissed you last week, you responded with such hunger it took all my control not to take you right there." Heat flooded my face at the memory. We had been in his car, parked outside my apartment after another dinner. His kiss had started gentle, questioning, but had quickly grown demanding, consuming. I had melted into him, returning his passion with an intensity that had shocked me until he had abruptly pulled away, his breathing ragged. "That doesn't mean I want this," I insisted, gesturing around at his penthouse, at the evidence of his criminal empire. "I don't want Lily involved in your world." "My world," he repeated, something like hurt flashing in his eyes. "And what do you know of my world, Eliana? What you've heard from Detective Riley? What you've gathered from rumors and innuendo?" "I know enough," I said, lifting my chin defiantly. "I know what you do, who you are." Dante laughed, the sound bitter and cold. "You know nothing." He turned away from me, running a hand through his dark hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "You think I'm some monster from a crime novel, some two-dimensional villain, the big, bad Mafia boss. He spat the last words with surprising venom. Then tell me, I challenged. Tell me who you really are. Tell me why Detective Riley was so desperate to get me away from you that he offered me witness protection. Tell me why your men put Marco in the hospital. Tell me why you've become so fixated on me and my daughter. Dante was silent for a long moment, his back to me, shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally turned to face me again, his expression was carefully neutral. Detective Riley wants you because he thinks you're my weakness, he said flatly. He thinks he can use you to get to me, to my organization. He doesn't care about your safety or Lily's. You're a means to an end for him, nothing more. And what am I to you? I asked quietly. A means to what end? Something flickered in his dark eyes. Vulnerability, perhaps. Or uncertainty. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You're not what I expected to find, not now. Not like this. What does that mean? He moved to the windows, looking out at the city sprawled below. It means that for the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. I saw you, and something shifted. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had built my life around, it suddenly seemed hollow. I watched him, this dangerous, powerful man who suddenly looked almost lost. Why me? I whispered. Dante turned from the window, his dark eyes finding mine again. Do you believe in fate, Eliana? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. Not really. He nodded, as if my answer was expected. My grandmother did. She used to tell me stories about souls that were meant to find each other, across time, across circumstances. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I thought it was nonsense, until I saw you. Something in his voice, a raw honesty I hadn't heard before, made my breath catch. What are you saying? I'm saying that the moment you walked up to my table at Bellini's, something clicked into place. Something I hadn't realized was missing. He moved closer, each step deliberate. You looked at me, really looked at me, without the fear or deference I'm accustomed to. You saw me as a man, not a position or a title or a threat. I was terrified, I admitted. Yes, he acknowledged with a slight nod, but not paralyzed by it. You stood your ground. You recommended the ossobuco with such quiet confidence. His smile widened fractionally. It was terrible, by the way. A startled laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Chef Marconi would be devastated to hear that. I didn't go there for the food. Dante was close enough now that I could smell his cologne again, could feel the heat radiating from his body. I was meeting with an associate. The restaurant is a convenient neutral ground. But then there you were, and suddenly nothing else seemed important. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure despite his proximity. That doesn't explain why you've inserted yourself into our lives. The gifts, the attention, taking custody from Marco, preparing a room for Lily. It's too much, too fast. For you, perhaps, he conceded. For me, it feels like I've been waiting far too long already. For what? His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. For someone worth changing for. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I shook my head, stepping back. I can't be responsible for your redemption, Dante. That's not fair. Redemption? He laughed, the sound genuinely amused. Is that what you think I want? To be saved from my sins? He shook his head. No, cara mia. I have no illusions about redemption. My soul was forfeit long ago. Then what do you want from me? I asked, frustration edging into my voice. Everything, he said simply, the single word resonating through me like a physical touch. And in return, I offer the same. I turned away, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze. You say that as if it's a fair exchange, but you've taken my choices away. You've backed me into a corner where agreeing to whatever this is seems like the only option. I heard him move behind me, felt his presence close again, though he didn't touch me. You always have choices, Eliana. I've ensured they're comfortable choices, advantageous to you and Lily, but they remain choices nonetheless. And if I choose to walk away? I asked, still not facing him. To take Lily and leave tonight? His silence lasted long enough that I finally turned to look at him. His expression was carefully controlled, but I could see the muscle working in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. "Is that what you want?" he asked finally, his voice deceptively calm. "I want to understand what's happening," I said honestly. "I want to know why a man like you would become so fixated on someone like me. I want to know what you're really offering, and what the price will be." Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded once, decisively. "Fair enough." He gestured to the couch. "Please sit. This conversation requires honesty from both of us." This time I complied, perching on the edge of the sleek leather sofa. Dante didn't join me immediately, instead moving to a cabinet similar to the one in his office. He removed another crystal decanter, pouring 2 glasses of what looked like brandy. "You didn't touch your whiskey earlier," he noted, offering me one of the glasses. "Perhaps this is more to your taste. My grandfather's cognac. He saved it for special occasions." I accepted the glass cautiously. "Is this a special occasion?" "Potentially." He settled beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched, but still maintaining a respectful distance. "It depends on where this conversation leads us." I took a small sip of the cognac, the liquid warming a path down my throat, then start talking. A hint of a smile touched Dante's lips at my directness. "Very well. The truth, then." He leaned back, his posture relaxed but his eyes still intense on mine. "My father disappeared 3 years ago, as I'm sure you've heard. What the rumors don't specify is that he was murdered by his own brother, my Uncle Antonio." I inhaled sharply, surprised by this unexpected beginning. "I'm sorry." Dante acknowledged my sympathy with a slight incline of his head. "My father was not a good man, Eliana. But he was my father, and family loyalty is everything in my world. Antonio betrayed that loyalty for power, for control of the organization my father had built. And you took it from him," I said, remembering the whispered stories about Dante's swift and brutal ascension. "Yes." His voice was cold now, his expression hardening. "I eliminated the cancer from our family. Antonio, his sons, everyone who conspired with him against my father." A chill ran down my spine at the casual way he spoke of murder. "And Detective Riley is investigating this?" Dante laughed humorlessly. "Riley couldn't find his way out of a paper bag with a map and a flashlight. No, he's a pawn, a minor piece moved by larger players. There's a federal task force that's been trying to build a RICO case against our family for years. They've never succeeded because we maintain strict separation between our legitimate businesses and our other interests." "Other interests," I repeated, unable to keep the judgment from my voice. His dark eyes flashed. "Yes, Eliana, I won't insult your intelligence by pretending I'm simply a businessman. The Castellano family has operated in this city for 3 generations. We have interests in construction, waste management, shipping, real estate, all legitimate. And yes, we also control certain aspects of the city's less reputable economy. Drugs, prostitution, gambling." "No drugs," he said firmly. "That line we do not cross. As for the rest," he shrugged one shoulder elegantly, "people will always seek pleasure, comfort, risk. We merely facilitate and protect." "And when someone crosses you?" I asked quietly, thinking of the photos Riley had shown me, of men beaten beyond recognition, of crime scenes too gruesome to describe. Dante's expression turned dangerous. "When someone betrays me, they pay the price, as Marco discovered." I flinched at the mention of Lily's father. What did Marco do exactly? Besides abandon us? Something shifted in Dante's eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or hesitation. Marco owes money to dangerous people. People even I hesitate to cross. When I began showing interest in you, they saw an opportunity. They approached Marco, offered to forgive his debts if he would provide information about me. About my movements. Through you. What? I set my glass down with trembling hands. Marco was using me to spy on you? He was planning to, Dante corrected. That day outside your apartment, he wasn't there just for money. He was there to reconnect, to work his way back into your life, to use you and Lily as pawns against me. The thought made me physically ill. How do you know this? I have sources everywhere, cara mia. Dante's voice softened slightly. When I realized his intentions, I made him a different offer. His debts paid, full legal surrender of parental rights to Lily, and his continued health, in exchange for his permanent absence from your lives. You threatened him, I said, but there was little heat in my accusation. After everything Marco had done, after abandoning us, only to return with such manipulative intentions. I persuaded him, Dante corrected. The beating came later, when he attempted to renege on our agreement. He approached you at the grocery store last week, did he not? I stared at Dante in shock. How did you... I told you, I have eyes everywhere. His expression darkened. He was warned what would happen if he contacted you again. He chose to ignore that warning. The grocery store. Last Tuesday. Marco had appeared suddenly in the produce section, his usual charming smile in place, asking about Lily, commenting on how good I looked. I'd been coldly polite, ending the conversation quickly. I hadn't thought it significant enough to mention to Dante. Clearly, that had been a mistake. You had him beaten because he spoke to me in public? I asked, horrified despite my complicated feelings toward Marco. I had him beaten because he violated an agreement that protected you and Lily. Dante corrected sharply, because he intended to use your daughter as leverage against me. Because he would have put you both in the crosshairs of people who would not hesitate to hurt you to get to me. The vehemence in his voice, the genuine concern for Lily's safety, gave me pause. These people Marco owed money to? They're that dangerous? Dante's expression turned grim. The Vega cartel doesn't believe in collateral damage. They embrace it. Their philosophy is that fear is maintained through unpredictable violence. If Marco had continued his association with you while working for them, you and Lily would have become targets the moment he became expendable. Fear clutched at my heart. And are we still in danger from them? No, Dante said firmly. I've made it abundantly clear that you and Lily are under my protection. Even the Vegas aren't foolish enough to cross that line. Not yet. At least. Not yet, I repeated, anxiety churning in my stomach. Dante leaned forward, taking my hands in his. His touch was warm, surprisingly gentle. This is my world, Eliana. I won't pretend it isn't dangerous. But I can promise you this. There is no safer place for you and Lily than by my side. No one would dare harm what belongs to me. We don't belong to you, I said automatically, though I didn't pull my hands away. Don't you? His thumbs traced circles on my palms, sending shivers up my arms. Tell me honestly, in these past weeks, haven't you felt it? This connection between us? This inevitability? I wanted to deny it, to maintain the fiction that I'd been an unwilling participant in whatever was growing between us, but the truth was more complicated. Yes, I had been afraid of Dante, wary of his power and reputation. But I had also been drawn to him from that first night at Bellini's, to his intensity, his focus, the way he looked at me as if I were the only person in the world worth seeing. I've felt something, I admitted reluctantly, but that doesn't mean I want this life for Lily. What life do you want for her? Dante asked, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. The life you've been providing? Working double shifts, barely making rent, worrying about medical bills, living in an apartment where the heat fails every winter? His words stung precisely because they hit so close to home. We've managed. You've survived, he corrected. But Lily could thrive. With me? With us? She would want for nothing. The best schools, the best opportunities, security, stability, and what happens when she's old enough to understand what you do? I challenged. When her classmates whisper about her stepfather, the Mafia boss, when she sees your name in the news connected to violence and crime. Dante's expression hardened. By the time Lily is old enough to understand such things, circumstances will be different. Different how? He released my hands, standing abruptly to pace the length of the window. Do you think I haven't considered this? That I haven't planned for a future that would be suitable for a family, for you and Lily? I watched him, confusion mingling with a dangerous hope. What are you saying? Dante turned to face me, his expression resolute. I'm saying that for the past year, I've been working to legitimize our family businesses entirely. moving our assets into legal ventures, cutting ties with the old ways. My father would never have considered it, but I see a different future. I stared at him in disbelief. You're trying to go legitimate? Just like that? Not just like that, he said, a hint of irritation coloring his tone. It's a complex process, dangerous. Many of our associates don't share my vision. There have been complications. Is that why Detective Riley is so interested in you right now? Because you're vulnerable during this transition? Dante's eyes narrowed slightly. Perceptive, cara mia. Yes, the authorities sense weakness, division. They're hoping to exploit it. Riley approached you because they believe you might have information, or that you could be persuaded to wear a wire, to gather evidence. The thought made me shudder. I would never. I know. He interrupted softly. That's why you're here, rather than in a cell, or worse. The implied threat should have terrified me. Instead, it only highlighted the precarious situation we were both in. So what happens now? With us? Dante moved back to the couch, sitting closer this time, his knee brushing against mine. That depends on you, Eliana. I've shown you my world. The danger, yes, but also the possibilities. I've told you my intentions for the future. Now you must decide if you're willing to be part of that future. And if I'm not? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His expression remained impassive, but I saw pain flash in his eyes. Then you and Lily will be provided for. A new identity, a new city, enough money to ensure you never need to work double shifts again. You would never see me again. The thought of never seeing Dante again created an unexpected hollowness in my chest. Despite everything, the fear, the manipulation, the danger, the idea of walking away from him permanently felt impossible now. And if I stay? I asked. Hardly believing I was considering it, Dante reached out, his fingers gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. If you stay, you accept all of me, who I am now and who I'm trying to become. You accept my protection, my provision, my devotion to you and Lily. You become mine in every way, and I become yours. Marriage, I said, the word coming out as a shocked whisper. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. Eventually, yes, when you're ready. When you can say yes, knowing exactly what you're agreeing to. And until then? His hand cupped my cheek, his touch feather-light. Until then, you and Lily stay here, where I can ensure your safety, where we can discover what we could be to each other, away from the eyes of both my world and yours. A trial period, I said, unable to keep a hint of wry humor from my voice. Dante's smile widened. If you prefer to think of it that way, yes. I should have been outraged, should have demanded he take us home immediately. Instead, I found myself considering his proposal, what was waiting for us at my apartment. More double shifts, more stress, more struggling to give Lily the life she deserved, and here was a man offering us everything, asking only for my trust and presence in return. A man who had ordered Marco beaten. A man who had built his empire on violence and fear. A man who was now trying to change, but whose past would always shadow his future, and ours, if I agreed to link our lives to his. I need time, I said finally, to think, to process all of this. Dante nodded, his expression carefully neutral. Of course. Take all the time you need. Tonight, rest. We can continue this discussion tomorrow. He stood, offering his hand to help me up. I took it, hyper-aware of the warmth of his skin, the strength in his fingers as they closed around mine. I'll show you to your room, he said, releasing my hand once I was standing. It's next to Lily's. I thought you would prefer to be close to her. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the emotional turmoil of the day. Thank you. Dante led me back through the penthouse, down the hallway where Maria had taken Lily earlier. He stopped at a door 2 down from my daughter's room, opening it to reveal a luxurious bedroom decorated in soothing shades of blue and cream. Everything you need should be here, he said, gesturing to a door within the room. Bathroom through there. Closet is fully stocked. At my surprised look, he added, Maria took your measurements from the clothes I've given you. I hope everything fits. The casual reminder of how thoroughly he had inserted himself into my life, how carefully he had planned for this moment, sent a shiver down my spine. Not entirely of fear. If you need anything during the night, press this button, he continued, indicating a panel by the bed. It will alert security and someone will assist you. Not you? I asked before I could stop myself. Dante's eyes darkened. If you want me, Eliana, you need only say my name. I will come to you. But only if you're certain that's what you want. The implication hung between us, charged with possibility. I swallowed hard, taking a step back. Good night, Dante. He inclined his head slightly. Good night, cara mia. Sleep well. He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway, looking back at me with an intensity that stole my breath. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about today, the way it happened. You deserved better than ultimatums and fear. Before I could respond, he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. Alone, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind racing with everything that had happened, everything I had learned. Dante Castellano was trying to go legitimate. He wanted me, us, to be part of that new life he was building. He was offering protection, security, a future free from the struggles that had defined my life since Lily was born. But at what cost? Could I trust him? Could I trust myself around him? I moved to check on Lily, finding her still fast asleep in her princess bed. Her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. She looked so peaceful, so content. Had she ever looked that way in our small apartment? Returning to my assigned room, I explored the space that Dante had prepared for me. The closet was indeed fully stocked. Designer clothes in exactly my size, from casual wear to formal gowns. The bathroom contained every luxury imaginable, including my favorite shampoo and the expensive face cream I had sampled once at a department store but could never afford to buy. He had thought of everything, planned for everything. The realization was both comforting and terrifying. Too exhausted to think clearly, I showered and changed into silk pajamas that felt sinfully soft against my skin. As I slipped between sheets with a thread count higher than I could imagine, I tried to make sense of the day, of the choices before me. Dante was dangerous. I had no illusions about that. He had built his power through violence and intimidation, but he was also trying to change, to build something legitimate, something lasting, something he wanted to share with me and Lily. Could people like Dante truly change? Or was I fooling myself, seeing only what I wanted to see, hearing only what I wanted to hear? As sleep claimed me, one thought echoed through my mind. By this time tomorrow, I would have to make a decision that would change our lives forever. Stay with Dante, accepting everything that choice entailed, or walk away from him completely. Neither option felt possible, neither option felt right. Yet somehow, in the morning, I would have to choose. I woke to sunlight filtering through sheer curtains and the disorienting sensation of unfamiliar surroundings. For a moment, I lay perfectly still. The events of yesterday rushing back in a disjointed flood. Dante's office, the confrontation, the revelation about Marco, the offer that wasn't really an offer. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Miss Eliana?" Maria's gentle voice called. "Are you awake?" "Yes," I replied, my voice still rough with sleep. "Come in." The door opened to reveal Dante's housekeeper balancing a tray laden with breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries, a pot of coffee that smelled divine. Behind her, Lily bounced on her toes, already dressed in jeans and a pink sweater I'd never seen before, her dark curls neatly braided. "Mommy, wake up," she exclaimed, darting past Maria to launch herself onto the bed. "Dante's taking us to the aquarium, the big one with sharks." I sat up slowly, trying to process this information. "Is he now?" Maria set the tray on a side table, smiling apologetically. "Mr. Castellano thought the little one might enjoy an outing today. He mentioned you both might be feeling confined." Her kind eyes met mine, conveying understanding I hadn't expected. "He said to tell you there is no pressure. If you prefer to stay here today, I would be happy to take Lily to the aquarium instead." I pulled Lily close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, the expensive brand I could rarely afford, but that she apparently now used regularly in Dante's home. "When is this aquarium trip supposed to happen?" "In an hour," Maria replied. "Mr. Castellano is in his study taking calls. He said to join him when you're ready, no rush." When Maria had left, closing the door softly behind her, I turned to Lily. "Did you sleep okay, sweetheart?" She nodded enthusiastically. "My bed is so bouncy, and Maria made pancakes shaped like fishies for breakfast. Can we live here forever, Mommy?" The innocent question sent a pang through my heart. "We'll see, baby. I need to talk to Dante first. Grown-up stuff." "Boring," Lily pronounced with the dismissive confidence of a 4-year-old. "Can I go watch cartoons? Dante has all the channels." I smiled despite myself. "Go ahead. I'll come find you after I get dressed." After Lily skipped out, I forced myself to eat some of the breakfast Maria had brought, though anxiety had stolen my appetite. The coffee, at least, was perfection. Strong and smooth, undoubtedly some rare, expensive blend. Everything in Dante's world seemed designed to remind me of the vast gulf between his lifestyle and mine. I showered quickly, then faced the closet with its intimidating array of designer options. Finally, I selected jeans that fit like they'd been custom-made for me, and a simple cashmere sweater in a deep blue that brought out my eyes. The woman who stared back at me from the mirror looked polished, well-rested, and completely unlike the exhausted waitress who had caught Dante Castellano's eye 3 weeks ago. Was that why he was attracted to me? The challenge of transformation? Of molding me into the perfect accessory for his new, legitimate life? The thought stung, but I pushed it aside. I needed clarity, not insecurity, if I was going to navigate the conversation ahead. Finding Dante's study proved easy. I simply followed the sound of his voice, speaking rapid Italian into what was presumably a phone. The door stood ajar, and I paused outside, watching him unobserved for a moment. He paced behind a massive desk, phone to his ear, his free hand gesturing emphatically as he spoke. He'd dressed casually today, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. Without the armor of his tailored suits, he looked younger, almost approachable. Almost. As if sensing my presence, he turned suddenly, his dark eyes finding mine. The harsh lines of his face softened immediately, his voice shifting to a gentler tone as he wrapped up his call with a few clipped words. "Buongiorno, cara mia," he said, setting the phone down and moving around the desk. "You slept well, I hope?" I crossed my arms, remaining in the doorway. "Well enough, considering," he nodded, accepting my guarded response without comment. "Maria told you about the aquarium?" "She did." Lily's very excited. "And you?" he asked, studying me carefully. "Would you prefer to stay here today, to have some time alone?" The consideration surprised me. "I thought I wasn't allowed to leave your sight after yesterday's indiscretion." A flash of regret crossed his features. "I reacted poorly yesterday. The thought of losing you to Riley, to witness protection." He shook his head slightly. "It was not my finest moment." "No, it wasn't," I agreed, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Threatening me, taking my daughter without permission. Those aren't actions that inspire trust, Dante." He moved to a seating area by the windows, gesturing for me to join him. After a moment's hesitation, I did, choosing an armchair rather than joining him on the sofa. "You're right," he said simply, surprising me again. "I've spent my life taking what I want, when I want it, forcing outcomes through power and intimidation. It's difficult to change those instincts, especially when something matters deeply to me." The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. "And I matter deeply to you. You know you do." His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. "You and Lily both." I looked away, unable to bear the weight of his gaze. "Why?" "You barely know us." "I know enough," he said softly. "I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you sacrificed everything for your daughter. I know you have a kindness that this harsh world hasn't managed to crush." He leaned forward, though he didn't attempt to touch me. "And I know that when you look at me, really look at me, you see past the name, past the reputation. You see the man beneath, the man who orders beatings for people who cross him," I reminded him, needing to hold on to my anger, my wariness. "Yes," he acknowledged without hesitation. That man, too. I won't pretend to be something I'm not, Eliana. I've done things, terrible things, that I can never undo. But the future... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. The future can be different, if I have something worth changing for. Me and Lily, I said flatly. No pressure there. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm not asking you to redeem me. Only to give me a chance to prove I can be the man you and Lily deserve. By taking us to the aquarium, I said, unable to keep a hint of wry humor from my voice. His smile widened, genuine amusement lighting his eyes. It's a start. Sharks are very impressive, you know. Lily will love them. Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. She will. A moment of comfortable silence stretched between us, so at odds with the tension of yesterday, that it felt almost surreal. Finally, I gathered my courage to ask the question that had been plaguing me since waking. If I say no to your offer, what happens? Really? Dante's expression turned serious again. I meant what I said. You and Lily will be provided for. New identities, new location, financial security. And if I say yes? If we stay? He leaned back, his posture relaxed, but his eyes intense on mine. We take it one day at a time. You and Lily remain here, where I can ensure your safety. You get to know me, the real me, not just the Mafia boss. I continue my work to legitimize our businesses. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, we make it official. Marriage, I said, the word still feeling foreign, impossible. Eventually, he agreed. But not until you're certain, not until you can say yes without reservation. I studied him, trying to reconcile the dangerous, controlling man from yesterday with this patient, almost vulnerable version before me now. And in the meantime, my job, my apartment. Your apartment lease has been paid through the end of the year, he said, confirming my suspicion that he'd already been managing aspects of my life I hadn't even realized. As for your job, that's your choice. If you want to continue working at Bellini's, you can, though I hope you might consider other options. Such as... You were studying music before Lily came along, weren't you? At my surprised look, he added, I make it my business to know everything about people who interest me. That was a lifetime ago, I said softly, memories of abandoned dreams stirring painfully. I had to drop out when I got pregnant. There was no time, no money. There is now, he said simply. If you wanted to return to your studies, I could arrange it. Or if there's something else you'd rather pursue, anything at all, it would be my pleasure to make it possible. The offer was tempting, so tempting that it frightened me. How easily I could become dependent on him, accustomed to his wealth and power solving all my problems. How quickly I could lose myself in the life he was offering. I need to think, I said finally, about all of this. I can't just decide overnight to completely change our lives. Dante nodded, accepting this without argument. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, he checked his watch, an understated but undoubtedly expensive piece. Shall we take Lily to see those sharks? Actually, yes, I decided, surprised by my own response. I think that would be good for her, for both of us. His smile was worth the concession. Excellent. I'll tell the security team to prepare. The day that followed was surreal. We traveled to the aquarium in a convoy of 3 black SUVs, Dante's security team maintaining a discreet but constant perimeter around us. Yet within that bubble of protection, the outing felt almost normal. A family trip, Lily skipping between us, her small hand sometimes in mine, sometimes in Dante's. Watching him with my daughter was a revelation. He answered her endless questions with infinite patience, knelt to her level to point out interesting fish, lifted her onto his shoulders when the crowds around the shark tank made it difficult for her to see. His usual intimidating demeanor softened completely in her presence, revealing a gentleness I wouldn't have believed possible. He's good with her, a voice observed quietly beside me as I watched Dante and Lily at the touch pool, his large hands carefully guiding her smaller ones as she giggled at the feel of a starfish. I turned to find Maria standing nearby, her expression warm, but evaluating. I hadn't realized she had accompanied us. though it made sense that Dante would bring his trusted housekeeper on what was essentially a test run of our potential future. Yes, he is, I admitted. Surprisingly so. Maria smiled knowingly. Not so surprising, perhaps. He had a younger sister once, Sophia. She would have been about your age now. Had? I asked, sensing a story behind her careful phrasing. Sadness flickered across the older woman's face. She died when she was 12. Leukemia. Mr. Castellano was 17, just beginning to take on responsibilities in the family business. He spent every moment he could at her bedside, reading to her, making her laugh when the treatments made her so ill. The revelation struck me deeply. Dante had never mentioned a sister, let alone one he had lost so young. I didn't know. He doesn't speak of her, Maria said softly. The pain is still too great, even after all these years, but I see her in his eyes sometimes. Especially when he looks at your Lily. She patted my arm gently, just something to consider, as you make your decision. She moved away before I could respond, leaving me to contemplate this new piece of Dante's puzzle. A teenage boy losing his beloved sister, even as he was being groomed for a life of power and violence. How had that shaped him? How had it influenced the man he had become? Mommy, look. Lily's excited voice pulled me from my thoughts. She ran toward me, Dante following at a more sedate pace, a fond expression on his face. I touched a ray. It was slimy and weird. That's amazing, sweetheart, I said, kneeling to accept her enthusiastic hug. Over her head, my eyes met Dante's, and something passed between us, an understanding, a connection I couldn't quite define, but couldn't deny either. The rest of the day passed in a similar fashion. Lunch at an upscale restaurant that nonetheless catered to children. A visit to the gift shop where Dante insisted Lily could choose anything she wanted. She selected a plush shark nearly as big as herself. And finally, ice cream despite the autumn chill. By the time we returned to the penthouse, Lily was half asleep against Dante's shoulder, her new shark clutched tightly in one arm. He carried her effortlessly, his expression softening whenever he glanced down at her drowsy face. I can take her, I offered, as we stepped into the elevator. I don't mind, he replied quietly, adjusting Lily more comfortably against his chest. She's tired herself out. Watching them, I felt something shift within me, a softening. A recognition that despite everything, despite all the reasons I should take Lily and run as far from Dante Castellano as possible, there was something here worth considering. Something that might, against all odds, be right for both of us. After Dante gently laid Lily in her bed, still clutching her shark, we retreated to the living room. The sky outside the floor-to-ceiling windows had darkened, the city lights creating a glittering backdrop that seemed designed for serious conversations. Thank you for today, I said, settling onto the sofa. Lily had a wonderful time, as did I, Dante replied, his voice genuine. He hesitated, then added, And you? Did you enjoy yourself at all, or was it merely an exercise in tolerance? The question surprised a laugh from me. Yes, I enjoyed parts of it. When I could forget about the armed guards and the circumstances that brought us here. He nodded, accepting this qualified response. Would you like a drink? Wine, perhaps? Please, I agreed, realizing I could use something to steady my nerves for the conversation ahead. Dante moved to a built-in bar, selecting a bottle and 2 glasses with practiced ease. Maria told you about Sophia, he said without preamble, his back still turned to me. I froze, caught off guard by his directness. Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. It's all right, he interrupted, turning to hand me a glass of deep red wine. Maria has been with my family since before I was born. She loves me in her way, and she's trying to help you understand me. He settled beside me on the sofa, closer than before but still maintaining a respectful distance. So, ask whatever you want to know about Sophia, about my past. Tonight is for truths. I sipped my wine, gathering courage. What was she like? Your sister? A genuine smile touched his lips, warming his usually hard eyes. Stubborn, brilliant, fearless. Even at 12, even when she was so sick she could barely stand. She had more courage than most grown men I've known. He swirled his wine, his gaze distant with memory. She wanted to be a doctor, used to make me play hospital with her, bandaging imaginary wounds, prescribing treatments that usually involved cookies. The image was so at odds with the dangerous Mafia boss I'd first met that I found myself smiling. She sounds wonderful. She was. His expression darkened. When she got sick, my father, he couldn't handle it. Threw himself into his work, his other women, his drinking. Left my mother and me to deal with it alone. Anger flashed in his eyes, old but still potent. I swore then that I would never be that kind of man, that I would never abandon the people who depended on me, no matter how difficult things became. Is that why you reacted so strongly to Marco? I asked softly. Because he abandoned us? Dante's jaw tightened. Partly. Men who run from their responsibilities. He shook his head in disgust, but it was more than that. When I learned he was planning to use you and Lily against me, to put you both in danger for his own benefit. There are few offenses I consider unforgivable. That is one of them. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering me since our conversation the previous night. The beating, though, was that really necessary? Dante studied me, perhaps measuring how honest he should be. In my world, yes, he said finally. Warnings must have consequences, or they become meaningless. Marco knew the rules when he approached you at the grocery store. He made his choice. I flinched slightly at the coldness in his tone, so at odds with the gentle man who had carried my sleeping daughter to bed just minutes ago. Dante noticed my reaction and sighed, setting his wineglass down. This is the reality, Eliana. I am not a good man by conventional standards. I've done things, ordered things done, that would horrify you. I've built my power through fear and violence, because that was the world I was raised in. The only path I knew. Until now, I said quietly. Until this legitimization you mentioned. He nodded, his expression serious. Until now. But even as I work to transform our businesses, to build something that could withstand scrutiny, that could be acceptable in the world your daughter will grow up in, I can't erase who I've been, what I've done. And if I accept your offer, I asked, forcing myself to meet his intense gaze, if Lily and I become part of your life, how do you protect us from that past, from the enemies you've made, the violence you've caused? Dante leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. With everything I have, every resource, every connection, every ounce of power I've accumulated, you would be untouchable, both of you. No one is untouchable, I countered. You just said the Vegas are one concern among many, he interrupted, and they're being dealt with. By this time next year, their influence in this city will be negligible. Something in his tone made me shiver. Dealt with how? He smiled thinly. Best you don't concern yourself with those details, cara mia. But that's just it, I said, frustration rising. How can I make this decision when there's so much you won't, or can't, tell me? How can I trust that you're really changing, really creating a safer future for us, when you're still operating in shadows and violence? Dante was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. You're right, he said finally. Trust requires transparency, and you deserve to understand exactly what you'd be agreeing to. He stood abruptly, offering his hand. Come with me. There's something I want to show you, curiosity overcoming caution. I took his hand and followed as he led me deeper into the penthouse, to a section I hadn't seen before. We stopped at a heavy door, where Dante pressed his palm to a scanner. After a moment, the door clicked open, revealing a room that looked like a high-tech command center. Multiple monitors displaying security feeds, financial data, and what appeared to be surveillance photos. This is my war room, Dante said quietly, leading me inside. From here, I monitor everything. Our legitimate businesses, our other interests, our enemies, our allies. He gestured to one wall of screens. These are the companies we've already transitioned to complete legitimacy. Real estate holdings, shipping contracts, construction firms, investment portfolios. I studied the displays, recognizing some of the largest development projects in the city, prestigious properties I'd only ever seen from the outside. The scale of Dante's empire was staggering. And these, he continued, moving to another section, are the operations still in transition. The screens showed what appeared to be nightclubs, casinos, private clubs, businesses that could easily serve as fronts for less legal activities. Gambling, primarily, Dante explained, noting my questioning look. Sports betting, high-stakes poker games, exclusive casino operations. Currently operating in gray areas of the law, but being restructured to comply with new gaming regulations by next quarter. And the rest? I asked, gesturing to a third set of screens displaying what looked like warehouse operations, docks, shipping containers being unloaded. Dante's expression turned grim. The most problematic aspects of our business. Protection services, some might call it extortion. Import-export of certain restricted goods. These are the operations that must be dismantled entirely rather than legitimized. The ones causing complications, I guessed, remembering his words from the previous night. Yes. His jaw tightened. Several of my father's old lieutenants resist the changes. They see our transformation as weakness, as abandoning traditions that built our strength. Are they dangerous? To you? The question slipped out before I could stop it, revealing a concern for his safety I hadn't meant to expose. Dante's eyes softened slightly. They would be to anyone else, to me. He shrugged one shoulder, the gesture elegant despite its casual nature. I've maintained my position because I'm more dangerous than they are, but their resistance slows the process, creates messiness I'd prefer to avoid. I turned slowly, taking in the full scope of the operation visible on the screens. This is your world, I said softly. All of this power, all of this control. Yes, he agreed simply. This is what I've built, what I'm now reshaping. He moved closer, not quite touching me, but near enough that I could feel the heat of his body. And this is what I'm offering to share with you, Eliana. Not just the wealth or the protection, but the power to help direct where it goes, how it's used. To help build something that Lily could one day inherit with pride rather than shame. The magnitude of what he was suggesting took my breath away. This wasn't just about a relationship, about becoming his wife or partner in a conventional sense. He was offering me a place at his side as he transformed an empire, as he rewrote his family's legacy. I don't know anything about running businesses like these, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You know about working hard, he countered. About sacrifice and determination, about protecting what matters. His hand found mine, his fingers entwining with my own. The rest, you can learn if you choose to. I looked down at our joined hands, the contrast striking. His skin darker than mine, his fingers marked with tiny scars I'd never noticed before, evidence of a violent past I could barely imagine. Yet his touch was gentle, his grip secure without being confining. What if I can't do this? I asked, finally voicing my deepest fear. What if I try, and I can't handle your world, your life? What happens to Lily then? Dante's free hand tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his gaze. Then we adjust. We find a compromise. I will never trap you, Eliana. If you say yes to this, to us, it won't be a prison sentence. It will be a beginning, one we shape together. The sincerity in his eyes, the gentleness in his touch, made something shift inside me. All day, I'd been looking for reasons to say no, to take Lily and run from this dangerous, complicated man. But now, standing in the heart of his operation, seeing both the darkness of his world and his genuine desire to transform it, I found myself considering a different possibility. What if saying yes wasn't surrender, but strength? What if this unlikely connection between us was exactly what we both needed? He to find his way toward redemption, me to find security and possibility after years of struggle. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice stronger now. And I need you to be completely honest, even if you think the truth will make me leave. Dante nodded, releasing my hand and giving me space. Ask. Detective Riley showed me photos, I said, watching his expression carefully, of men who crossed you, men who didn't survive the experience. I swallowed hard, gathering courage. Have you killed people, Dante? Ordered their deaths? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. Yes. The single word hung between us, heavy with implication. I'd known the answer before I asked, of course. No man reached Dante's position without blood on his hands, but hearing him admit it so directly made it real in a way I couldn't ignore. Could you ever stop? I asked. The question surprising even me, not just the illegal businesses, but the violence, the retribution. Could you ever truly become the man you're pretending to be with Lily? I'm not pretending with Lily, he said sharply, genuine offense in his tone. What you see between us, that's real. But so is the man who ordered Marco beaten, I countered. So is the man who threatened me yesterday, who has enemies watched and eliminated. Both versions of you exist, Dante. I need to know which one will win in the end. He was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Violence has been my language for so long, he said finally. The currency of respect in my world. Changing that, it won't happen overnight. It may never be complete. He stepped closer again, his eyes intense on mine. But I can promise you this, I will never bring that violence home. Never let it touch you or Lily, and I will continue moving our businesses toward legitimacy until violence is no longer necessary to maintain our position. And if someone threatens us, threatens you? A dangerous smile curved his lips. Then all bets are off, cara mia. I told you. I protect what's mine, by any means necessary. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was honest. Dante Castellano would never be a conventional man, never fully escape the darkness that had shaped him. But perhaps, with the right motivation, he could channel that darkness, control it, use it to protect rather than destroy. I don't know if I can live with that, I admitted, with knowing what you're capable of, what you might do in our name. You don't have to decide tonight, he said, reaching for my hand again. Or tomorrow or next week. Take the time you need, Eliana. I've waited my whole life to find you. I can wait a little longer for your answer. His words sent warmth spreading through me despite my lingering doubts. This dangerous, complicated man was offering me patience, understanding, time to consider a future I never could have imagined for myself and Lily. As we left the war room, returning to the more normal spaces of the penthouse, I found myself leaning slightly against his solid presence beside me, exhausted by the emotional weight of the past 2 days. You should rest, he said softly, noting my fatigue. It's been an overwhelming time for you. I nodded, unable to deny my exhaustion. I should check on Lily first, of course. We walked in comfortable silence to Lily's room, where I found her still sleeping peacefully, her new shark plush tucked under one arm. I brushed a kiss against her forehead, grateful for her innocent slumber, her unawareness of the complicated adult world swirling around her. When I turned back to the doorway, Dante was watching us with an expression of such naked longing that it took my breath away. In that unguarded moment, I saw everything he wanted, not just me, but this, a family, a connection to something pure and untainted by his violent past. Good night, Dante, I said softly, moving past him into the hallway. He caught my hand gently, raising it to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and deeply intimate. Good night, cara mia. Sleep well. As I closed my bedroom door behind me, I leaned against it, my mind racing. Tomorrow, I would need to make a decision that would alter the course of our lives forever. But tonight, for the first time since this whirlwind began, I felt something unexpected settling in my chest. Hope. Dangerous, foolish, exhilarating hope that perhaps, against all odds, Dante Castellano could be exactly what Lily and I needed, and perhaps, even more incredibly, we could be what he needed too. Morning light streamed through the windows as I sat at the elegant writing desk in my room, a cup of coffee cooling beside me. I'd been awake since dawn, my mind too full of thoughts to allow for restful sleep. On the pristine stationery Dante had provided, heavy cream paper with a subtle watermark, I'd written 2 lists: reasons to stay, reasons to go. The go column was substantial: Dante's criminal past and present, the violence he'd both committed and ordered, the enemies who might target us to get to him, the complications of raising Lily in his world, the loss of independence that would inevitably come with accepting his offer. Yet the stay column had grown longer as the morning progressed. Security for Lily, financial, physical, emotional. The chance to pursue dreams I'd abandoned years ago. Dante's genuine care for my daughter. The undeniable connection between us, something I couldn't fully explain but couldn't deny either. The possibility of helping shape his transformation into something legitimate, something lasting. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria with breakfast. Instead, Dante himself entered, already dressed in casual slacks and a light sweater, his hair still damp from a shower. He carried a small tray with a fresh cup of coffee and a plate of pastries. "I thought you might be awake," he said, setting the tray on the desk beside my lists, which I instinctively moved to cover. He smiled slightly but didn't comment on my protective gesture. "Lily's still sleeping. Yesterday's excitement tired her out." "Thank you for the coffee," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Did you sleep well?" "No." His honesty surprised me. I rarely do. "Nightmares?" I asked before I could stop myself. A shadow crossed his face. "Sometimes." "Mostly just thoughts that won't quiet." He hesitated, then added, "Last night, thoughts of you, of what your decision might be." The vulnerability in his admission touched me unexpectedly. This powerful man, who controlled an empire built on fear and dominance, was standing before me with uncertainty in his eyes, waiting for my judgment. "I've been thinking about it all night too," I admitted, making lists, weighing options. "Very practical," he observed, his lips quirking in a small smile. "May I?" He gestured to the armchair near the desk. I nodded, and he settled into it, his posture relaxed, but his eyes intent on mine. "Have your lists provided clarity?" "Some," I said cautiously. "There are good reasons to walk away from this. From you, reasons any rational person would consider definitive. And yet you haven't packed Lily's things and demanded I take you home," he noted, "which suggests there are also reasons to stay that carry significant weight for you." I sipped my coffee, using the moment to gather my thoughts. "Last night, you showed me your operation, your power, your control. But there's something you haven't shown me, something I need to understand before I can make this decision." Dante leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "Ask, and if it's in my power to show you, I will." "Your heart," I said simply. "Not the part that loves Lily, that's evident to anyone who sees you with her. Not even the part that wants me, desires me. That's clear enough too." I set my coffee down, holding his gaze steadily. "I need to see the part that's capable of truly loving someone, of putting their needs above your own power, your own control. I need to know that exists, Dante, before I can even consider a future with you." He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher than I'd heard before. "What do you know about my father's disappearance?" The official story. The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. "Just what everyone knows. He went missing 3 years ago. His body was never found. Most people assume it was a rival family, or maybe an internal power struggle." Dante nodded slowly. "That's the story we allowed to spread. The truth is more complicated." He stood suddenly, moving to the window, his back to me. "My father didn't disappear. He's in a private medical facility in Switzerland, under a different name. Has been for the past 3 years. He's alive," I whispered, stunned by this revelation. Dante turned to face me, his expression grave. In a manner of speaking, he suffered a massive stroke. The doctors say he's aware but cannot speak, cannot move beyond blinking his eyes. He requires round-the-clock care. "I don't understand," I said, struggling to process this information. "Why fake his disappearance? Why not just tell people he was ill? Because in our world, illness is weakness," Dante explained, his voice hard. "And weakness invites attack. If our rivals had known my father was incapacitated, they would have moved against us immediately. The family would have been torn apart, our territory divided among enemies. So you..." "What? Took over and pretended he was missing?" "I created a narrative of mysterious disappearance that suggested both external and internal threats," he said, his tone analytical, detached. It kept everyone uncertain, cautious. It gave me time to secure my position without immediate challenges. I stared at him, still confused about why he was telling me this now. What does this have to do with what I asked you? Dante moved back to the chair, sitting closer to me this time, his eyes never leaving mine. I visit him every month, fly to Switzerland under the pretense of business meetings, sit by his bed for hours, telling him about the family, the business, reading to him from books he used to enjoy. His voice softened. He was a monster in many ways. Cruel, unfaithful, indifferent to my mother's suffering, to Sophia's illness. He taught me to be ruthless, to trust no one, to see compassion as weakness. And yet you care for him still, I said, beginning to understand. He is my father, Dante said simply. Family is everything, even when they don't deserve our loyalty, even when caring for them goes against every logical consideration. He reached for my hand, his touch gentle. The man who taught me to be a monster also taught me the importance of family bonds, of protection, of sacrifice for those who are ours. I looked down at our joined hands, his olive skin against my paler tone. You could have put him in some anonymous facility, forgotten about him. It would have been easier. Yes, he agreed, more practical, more in line with how he raised me to think. A hint of bitterness colored his tone. He would have done exactly that, had our positions been reversed, but you couldn't, I said softly. No. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture absent-minded, intimate. Some obligations transcend logic, transcend deserving. Some bonds can't be severed, no matter how much simpler life might be without them. The realization of what he was truly telling me washed over me like a wave. This wasn't just about his father, it was about his capacity to love, to remain faithful to commitments even when they became difficult, inconvenient. It was his answer to my question about his heart. You're showing me that if I choose you, I said slowly, if I accept this life, this commitment, you would never abandon us, no matter what happened, no matter how difficult things became. His dark eyes held mine, filled with an intensity that stole my breath. I would die first, Eliana. You and Lily would never want for anything, would never face any hardship I could prevent, would never doubt your place in my life. This I swear to you. The fierce sincerity in his voice, the naked vulnerability in his expression, broke something open inside me. This dangerous, complicated man was offering me not just wealth and protection, but a devotion so complete it was almost frightening in its intensity. I believe you, I whispered, surprising myself with the truth of it. God help me, but I do. Something shifted in his expression, hope, perhaps, cautious but real. Does that mean... It means I'm still thinking, I interrupted, needing to maintain some semblance of control over this life-altering decision. But yes, it helps, knowing that part of you exists. He nodded, accepting this without pushing further. After a moment, he asked, what would make the decision easier for you? What concerns weigh most heavily? I considered the question seriously, appreciating that he wasn't simply trying to overcome my objections, but genuinely wanted to understand my hesitation. Lily, I said finally. My biggest fear is how growing up in your world might affect her. The danger, yes, but also the values, the expectations. I don't want her thinking violence is an acceptable way to solve problems. I don't want her becoming entitled or spoiled by wealth she didn't earn. I don't want her growing up afraid, always looking over her shoulder for threats. Dante's expression turned thoughtful. All valid concerns. What if... He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. What if we establish some boundaries? Certain aspects of my business, my past, would remain separate from our home life. Lily would be raised with normal expectations, normal responsibilities, despite the privilege she would enjoy. That sounds good in theory, I said skeptically. But how would it work in practice? Your world has already invaded our lives completely. Not completely, he countered. Not yet. We could establish a different home, not this penthouse, which is too connected to my business operations. A house outside the city, perhaps, with normal neighbors, normal schools, somewhere Lily could have as conventional a childhood as possible, given the circumstances. The suggestion surprised me. You'd be willing to do that? To create that separation between your work and our family life, if that's what it would take, yes. He said without hesitation. I've lived my entire life in the center of this organization, this legacy. I know better than anyone the cost of that immersion. His expression softened. I wouldn't want that for Lily or for you. And I studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. And the legitimization you mentioned. How long would that realistically take? The major transitions, perhaps another year, he said after a moment's consideration. Some operations are more entrenched than others, but the groundwork has already been laid. By the time Lily starts school, the Castellano name could represent entirely legal enterprises. And the violence? I pressed. The enemies? The threats? His expression hardened slightly. Some risks can never be entirely eliminated, but they can be managed, minimized. With the right precautions, the right security measures, you and Lily would be safer with me than without me. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. The world is dangerous regardless, Eliana. At least with me, the dangers are known, anticipated, prepared for. There was truth in his words, uncomfortable as it was to acknowledge. The world had never felt particularly safe to me, even before Dante entered our lives. As a single mother struggling to make ends meet, I'd faced different but equally real threats. Eviction, illness without insurance, the constant grind of poverty that wore down body and spirit alike. One more thing, I said, making a decision I hadn't even realized I was considering until that moment. If I agree to this, to us, I need something from you. A promise. Anything, he said immediately, the readiness of his response both touching and concerning. I need to be your partner, not your possession, I said firmly. I need to have a voice in decisions that affect our family. I need to maintain some independence, my own interests, my own identity beyond being Dante Castellano's wife. He was silent for a moment, considering my words. Partnership is unfamiliar territory for me, he admitted finally. I've spent my life giving orders, not seeking consensus. But for you, he reached for my hand again, his grip gentle but secure. For us, I can learn a different way. The simple acknowledgement of his limitations, his willingness to grow beyond them, felt more meaningful than any grand promise could have been. This powerful, controlling man was offering not just his protection and provision, but his vulnerability, his willingness to change patterns established over a lifetime. I need time, I said, though I could feel my resistance weakening with each moment, a trial period like you suggested. To see if this can really work before we make it permanent, hope flared in his dark eyes. Then you're considering saying yes? Before I could respond, a small voice called from the doorway. Mommy! Dante! We both turned to see Lily standing there in her borrowed pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep, her plush shark dragging behind her. Good morning, sweetheart, I said, holding out my arms to her. She patted across the room, climbing into my lap, and leaning back against my chest with the easy confidence of a child who has never doubted her welcome. Are we still at Dante's house? She asked, blinking sleepily. Yes, Piccola, Dante answered, his voice softening as it always did with her. Did you sleep well? Lily nodded, her attention already shifting to the pastries on the tray. Can I have one, please? Of course, Dante said, selecting a chocolate-filled croissant and placing it on a napkin for her. Careful, it's a bit messy. I watched as my daughter happily munched her pastry, chocolate smearing around her mouth, completely at ease in this luxury penthouse, completely comfortable with the dangerous man sitting across from us. Children had an instinct about people, I'd always believed. And Lily had accepted Dante from the beginning, had never shown a moment's fear or hesitation with him. Perhaps her instincts were better than my careful lists, my anxious deliberations. Lily, I said softly, how would you feel about staying here with Dante for a while? Not just for a visit, but living here. Her face lit up, chocolate forgotten. Really? Forever? I glanced at Dante, whose expression had gone carefully neutral, though I could see the tension in his shoulders, the hope he was trying to contain. Maybe not here exactly, I said carefully. Maybe in a house with a yard where you could have a swing set, but yes, with Dante. Would you like that? Yes! Lily bounced excitedly in my lap. Can I still have piano lessons? And can we get a puppy? Dante said maybe when we have a yard. I raised an eyebrow at Dante, who had the grace to look slightly abashed. You've been discussing pets already, have you? Hypothetically, he said, his lips quirking in a small smile. Lily squirmed off my lap, moving to Dante with the easy confidence of complete trust. Without hesitation, he lifted her onto his knee, seemingly unconcerned about chocolate stains on his expensive slacks. Can we, Dante? She asked, looking up at him with pleading eyes. Can we live in a house with a yard and get a puppy? If that's what you and your mother want, yes, he said softly, his gaze lifting to meet mine over Lily's head. The question in his eyes was clear. Was this really happening? Was I actually considering his offer? Watching them together, my bright, beautiful daughter and this dangerous, complex man who looked at her with such genuine tenderness, something settled in my chest. A certainty I hadn't expected to find so soon, so completely. Lily, sweetheart, I said, why don't you go see if Maria is in the kitchen? Maybe she'll make you some hot chocolate to go with your pastry. Okay. She hopped down from Dante's lap, pausing at the door to ask, Are you and Dante coming too? In a few minutes, I promised. We need to talk about grown-up things first. When she had skipped away, I turned back to Dante, who was watching me with an intensity that made my heart race. You're considering it, he said softly. Truly considering it. Yes, I admitted, no longer seeing any point in denying the inevitable. But I need you to understand something, Dante. If we do this, if we try to build a life together, I won't be the perfect, obedient partner you might expect. I'll question you. I'll challenge you when I think you're wrong. I'll demand better from you when it comes to Lily, to our family. Instead of bristling at my conditions, he smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his usually severe features. I wouldn't want you any other way, cara mia. Your strength, your independence, these are what drew me to you from the beginning. And Lily comes first, I continued, needing him to understand completely. Always. If at any point I feel she's in danger, or being negatively influenced by your world, we leave. No negotiations, no second chances. Agreed, he said without hesitation. Her well-being is paramount. On this, we are aligned completely. I took a deep breath, hardly able to believe what I was about to say. Then, yes, we can try this. The trial period you suggested, living together, building a life, seeing if what's between us is real and lasting. For a moment, Dante remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter this fragile agreement. Then slowly he reached for me, his hands cradling my face with infinite gentleness. May I? He whispered, his eyes dropping to my lips. In answer, I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. His kiss was nothing like the desperate passion of that night in his car. This was gentle, reverent almost, his lips moving against mine with exquisite restraint, as if I were something precious, something he feared might break. I found myself leaning into him, my hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders, deepening the kiss until I felt the careful control he was maintaining start to fray. When we finally broke apart, his breathing was uneven, his dark eyes filled with a heat that sent shivers down my spine. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that properly, he murmured, his thumb tracing the curve of my lower lip. I think I might, I admitted, surprised by my own boldness. I've thought about it too, more than I should have. His smile turned predatory, reminding me forcibly of exactly who and what he was. Not just the gentle man who cared for Lily, but the dangerous, powerful figure who commanded an empire through force of will and strategic violence. We should join Lily, I said, needing to break the growing tension between us. Before she comes looking for us again. Dante nodded, reluctantly releasing me and standing. Of course. But Eliana... He caught my hand as I rose, pulling me gently against him once more. This conversation isn't finished. There's much more I want to say to you. Much more I want to show you. The heat in his voice, The barely restrained desire in his eyes sent warmth spreading through me. Later, I promised, allowing myself to lean into him briefly, savoring the solid strength of him against me. We have time. Yes, he agreed, pressing a kiss to my forehead. All the time in the world now. As we walked hand in hand to find Lily, I marveled at the strange path that had led me here. 3 weeks ago, I had been a struggling single mother, exhausted and alone. Now I was preparing to join my life with one of the most powerful, dangerous men in the city. A man who looked at my daughter with genuine love, who offered me a future beyond anything I could have imagined for myself. It wasn't conventional. It wasn't safe, in the ordinary sense of the word, but perhaps, I realized, it was exactly where Lily and I were meant to be. Perhaps this unlikely connection, this impossible choice, was actually the rightest thing I'd ever done. Only time would tell. But for now, watching Dante lift Lily onto a kitchen stool, listening to her chattering excitedly about the puppy she hoped to have, seeing the genuine joy in his expression as he attended to her every word, I allowed myself to believe in possibilities I'd never dared consider before. A family, created not from conventional beginnings but from chance and choice and courage. A love, growing not from ideal circumstances but from the messy, complicated reality of two imperfect people finding something worth fighting for in each other. And a future, uncertain but filled with potential, stretching before us like an unwritten story. One we would author together, one page at a time. 6 months later. Are you ready? Dante's voice called from the hallway, a hint of impatience coloring his tone. Almost, I replied, fastening the clasp of the sapphire necklace he'd given me that morning. Just because, he'd said, though we both knew it was to mark 6 months since I'd agreed to his proposal. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself, hair elegantly styled, makeup flawless, thanks to the professional Dante had insisted on hiring for tonight's event. Designer gown-hugging curves I hadn't even realized I possessed, before months of proper nutrition, and a lifestyle that didn't involve constant physical exhaustion. The past 6 months had been transformative, in ways both expected and surprising. True to his word, Dante had found us a beautiful house outside the city, spacious but not ostentatious, with the yard Lily had so desperately wanted, and enough distance from his business operations that we could pretend, most days, that we were just a normal family. Lily had flourished, thriving in her new preschool, excelling in the piano lessons Dante had arranged, doting on the golden retriever puppy that had joined our family 3 months ago. She called Dante Papa now, a development that had brought actual tears to his eyes the first time it happened. As for Dante and me, our relationship had deepened in ways I hadn't thought possible. Behind closed doors, away from the persona he maintained for the world, he was passionate, attentive, occasionally vulnerable in ways that still surprised me. We argued sometimes, his natural tendency toward control clashing with my fierce independence, but those storms always cleared, leaving us stronger, more certain of each other. And true to his word, he had continued the process of legitimizing the Castellano enterprises. It hadn't been without complications. There had been tense nights when he returned home late, his expression grim, offering no explanation beyond business matters. There had been increased security measures implemented after what he would only describe as credible threats. There had been whispers in the society pages about the transformation of the Castellano family's interests, speculation about the woman and child who had seemingly inspired this change. But through it all, Dante had remained steadfast in his commitment to building a future we could all share without shame or fear. Tonight marked another milestone in that journey. The grand opening of the Castellano Foundation's new children's hospital wing, named in memory of Sofia. It would be our first official public appearance as a couple, the first time I would stand beside Dante as he revealed this more legitimate, charitable face of his empire to the world. Eliana? Dante appeared in the doorway of our bedroom, resplendent in a tuxedo that emphasized his powerful frame, his dark eyes warming as they took in my appearance. You look breathtaking. Thank you, I said, a blush heating my cheeks despite the months we'd spent together. Is Lily ready? Maria just finished helping her into her dress. She's very excited about being a princess tonight. His smile softened, as it always did when he spoke of my daughter. Our daughter, in every way that mattered now. She wants you to approve her hairstyle before we leave. I nodded, moving toward the door, but Dante stopped me, his hand gentle on my arm. Before we go, he said, his expression turning serious, there's something I need to ask you. What is it? I asked, concern flickering through me at his suddenly solemn tone. To my complete shock, Dante Castellano, feared Mafia boss, ruthless businessman, the most powerful man in the city, dropped to one knee before me, reaching into his pocket to withdraw a small velvet box. Our trial period is officially over, he said, his voice rough with emotion. And I find myself more certain than ever that you and Lily are everything I never knew I needed, everything I want for all the days of my life. He opened the box, revealing a stunning sapphire and diamond ring that perfectly matched the necklace I wore. Eliana Morgan, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of our family, now and always? Tears blurred my vision as I looked down at this powerful man kneeling before me, offering not just wealth and protection now, but his heart, his name, his future. Yes, I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. Yes, Dante, I'll marry you. His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto my finger, then rose to pull me into a kiss that promised everything words couldn't express: passion and commitment, protection and partnership. A love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings into something unbreakable. Mommy, Papa, look at my dress! Lily's excited voice broke us apart, both of us turning to see our daughter twirling in the doorway, resplendent in her blue party dress, her dark curls arranged in an elaborate style that matched mine. Dante lifted her effortlessly, settling her on his hip as he wrapped his other arm around my waist, drawing me against his side. What do you think, Piccola? Should Mommy marry us and be part of our family forever? Lily's eyes widened, her gaze dropping to the ring now sparkling on my finger. Yes, she squealed, clapping her hands in delight. Does that mean I can be Flower Girl? Maria said real princesses have flower girls at their weddings. Dante laughed, the sound free and unrestrained in a way it rarely was outside our home. Of course, Tesoro. You'll be the most beautiful flower girl the city has ever seen. As we made our way downstairs, Lily chattering excitedly about wedding plans between us, I marveled once again at the strange, wonderful path that had brought us here. From that first night at Bellini's, when Dante Castellano had walked into my life with all his danger and intensity, to this moment, a family, whole and happy, moving together toward a future brighter than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't a conventional fairy tale, the dangerous mafia boss and the struggling waitress finding in each other exactly what they needed to become more than they had been alone. But it was our story, and as I glanced at Dante, my fiancé, my protector, my partner, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't change a single word of it.